If you're a student who hates school, you're like, life could not be better. We've experiencing this pandemic right now that's really still finishing up and still trying to figure it out with this new Delta variant and all this. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. Oakland schools start next Monday. Here's what I know for sure. Some students don't even know if they're going back or they're going to be at home. Like, parents had to fill out a form or something. I want my kid to go. I want my kid to be at home. There's still confusion. So we're about to send teachers who had a little time to rest. But teachers right now in Oakland are in professional development this week. So they got to get their classrooms ready. Oh, wait, am I preparing a classroom for 10 kids, for full kids? Like, we don't even know. In the Bay Area, the indoor mask thing just went back into place yesterday. Or it comes in today, I guess. So I don't even know what the new rule is. I try and keep a mask on as much as I can when I'm, somewhere in public or whatever. But there's new rules. So imagine we're about to send students back to a place where there's still some uncertainty. There's been uncertainty for a long time now. And we're still trying to figure it out. So if you are a student who loves school, like, you are having a struggle, having to stay at home and do this thing right here on this screen. If you're a student who hates school, you're like, life could not be better. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know two different phases of my life where I could see how I would have felt in different ways, right? If I was a middle schooler and you told me I had to be on the computer every day in front of first of all, there were no computers when I was in middle school. So there were computers, but they weren't like home computers. It definitely wasn't no laptops and no Zoom, none of that, right? But I wouldn't have been on the computer. I didn't even like looking at myself in the mirror. But you want me to look at myself on a screen all day long? There is no way in the world. That computer would have got lost, just like my clarinet got lost, That clarinet got lost 18 times and it kept finding me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I left that clarinet on so many different buses because I didn't want to do it, And somehow the clarinet, I guess my mom put some tracking device in it back in the 80s. She was like, oh, we ain't paying for this. You gonna keep this clarinet. But I'm saying the idea is that how do we deal with students who don't like school the way school is designed? Now, here's what I do also know. I saw some schools go back this past semester. Some schools look just like they did before the pandemic. The teacher was still in the front of the room. The students were still in rows. And the teacher had all the knowledge that the students had to there and absorb and then regurgitate back to them. How is it that we as a developed country could have an opportunity to change the way education works for those who it doesn't work for? Forget the ones who it works for. There are kids, their parents are going to make sure they get an education, whether they got to have private tutors come to their house, right? I'm talking about the kids who are in the middle to the lower end of the academic, I'm trying to think of the right word, like ability, but also like hunger for education and learning, right? Like, what about those kids? Like, we have, and we still have in our hands opportunity to. Schools figured out in a matter of a month and a half or so to get almost every kid, now with different varies of technology and all that, learning from home. For kids who have severe stress, worry, anxiety situations, why couldn't we have figured that out before? Why couldn't we have figured out a system that was going to work for most kids who it didn't work for before? Now, here's what we also know. In terms of education, I'm really passionate about education, so I got to be careful I can talk long about this, but I'll stop here at this last point. There are a lot of students who I know and students who I've heard of who should not have graduated last year. But let's see how you're going to argue with a child's parent who wants to argue, let's just say that, right? And who thinks their child can do no wrong, that their child, even though they did no work, should still graduate. I don't know how anyone could argue that, but we've seen people argue things that are ridiculous before. So, why are we shocked, right? There are students who were pushed along through this last 2 years, and I imagine who knows what's going to happen this year. But for those who don't know how education works, I'm hoping that I'm breaking down a facade of that every kid goes in and learns and then they get a grade, and then they do well. Like, there is some stuff that goes on in education that we know. How many district people are going to fight hundreds of parents because their kids didn't turn in, they didn't get a C, so they got a D, therefore their A through G is like, there's a lot of stuff that happened over this last year, and there's a lot of learning that got lost. That's one thing about the learning that got lost, but also just in the systems that teachers had to process of, what do I do? What do I do if I have 25%, 50% of my kids who didn't do any work? Do I fail half the class? Well, some teachers have a moral compass that says, absolutely, you're all gonna fail. But the district has another compass. Like, we can't be in all these fights with all these parents who are gonna blame the technology, who are gonna blame the teachers, who are gonna blame the schools, who are gonna blame a messed up system, who are gonna blame a pandemic. I'm just knowing that we have a lot of work to do to not only help educators, help kids during this time. And I think that we could absolutely dramatically improve schools. I think that we can create schools that look like the schools that looked over the last year, where kids who don't really want to be in a traditional kind of school learn in different pods, like learn differently, because we all learn differently. But if we keep putting people back into the industrial building that's supposed to make them follow along and do what everyone else does, we're going to keep losing. And we're going to keep losing not the kids who are going to do it anyway, not the kids who would have made up their own homework, but some of the kids who need a little bit more support, who need a little bit more encouragement. I think that's what we have a chance to change, and dramatically change.